Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of Consultus Chats. My name's Sam Buckingham and I'm joined by Dale. In this session we're going to be covering utility procurement. Dale, if you'd just like to introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Dale, I work in the procurement department. We do electricity, gas and the water. We predominantly do the UK in our team, but we do international elsewhere.
Well, start us off then, just talk us through the typical procurement process your team would go through.
So it's a bit different depending on the product, but on the fixed department, we have normally a 5-day turnaround. We give suppliers 5 days more because it gives them time to price, get the pricing slots in, look at their credit and review credit. It also gives them time to upload the data because obviously there's quite a lot of half-hourly data. Normally we provide them with 12 months, so they need to upload that. And then that gives them time to also get approvals for better prices depending on the client and whether they want to win. We also then have the flex department, which the timescales are a bit longer. So on the flex department, we like to give suppliers 2 to 3 weeks to price. That's mainly due to the exposure to the market because typically volumes are bigger. So that will mean that they will need to get approval for the management fees and credit will take longer for their departments because they will need to look at the different exposures to the market. So we normally give them 2 to 3 weeks. From there, we will then look at our pricing. We have to price up, so all the suppliers independently. We then also have to look at how their product looks and differently, and we also always give every single supplier that prices for us feedback. So we always give them 24 to 48 hours to get the best price because ultimately the client is the king and we need to get the best price from the supplier. So that's what we'll try to do. And the time, normally it takes 7 days to do a flex tender.
Okay. So how many suppliers does your team go out to? What access do you have?
At the moment, we go to over electricity and gas, around 22 suppliers. It depends on the market, depends on the client and the product being offered. For example, some suppliers exclusively do renewable, so if a client wasn't interested in renewable, that's not something we would look at typically. We'd obviously take that into account. But we try to be as independent as possible, so we vet all our suppliers and go out to them all and make sure that they're providing the service we need across the whole departments in the business, not just procurement itself. There's no point a supplier being the best on price if they can't offer the service we need.
Yeah, no, it's something common that comes across in a lot of conversations I have. We often make recommendations on price, product and service. Particularly when speaking with people in finance, for example, price tends to be quite important to them.
Yeah.
But that soon goes out the window if the supplier can't build them correctly, and that sort of price benefit is soon lost in resource time. So no, it's important that all those variables are considered. You've mentioned how we go out to 22 suppliers. Obviously there can be new entrants to the market. What's the process of onboarding and vetting new suppliers?
Yeah, so it's quite a long-winded process really because we want to make sure that the suppliers are right for the business, not just for procurement. But similar to recommending a supplier for a tender, when we look at it, we need to make sure that not only they're good on price, but they're good for all departments within the business. They need to make sure they can validate our bills correctly for what we need. They make sure that typically they can trade. The trading desks are good to look for. Their contracts are easy access and readable. The service is good, and also we look at the finance department to make sure they pay how necessary needs. So we'll look at that. There is also the other side of it where there's the TPI agreement between the supplier and us. That gets reviewed by our directors and make sure that we're happy with that supplier when we put them on board.
Yeah, I mean, I think people would have probably heard some of the horror stories about suppliers that come into the market and unfortunately may not be around for very long. It has a huge knock-on impact, so we're quite keen to ensure that we're not recommending those suppliers to our customers. So in terms of your team then, we've already touched on price being important. Obviously it's very important to a lot of our clients, but what are the other sort of key elements that you'd be negotiating with suppliers?
So again, it depends on the product. So on fixed, obviously we don't break down the price as much as on the flex department. On the fixed, you typically just see a day-night rate or just in a standing charge and a rate. So price is important, but we also do look at the product that they're offering. Since COVID and the market, when the market spiked last 2 years ago, we're now looking at volume tolerance a lot more. Suppliers are offering better volume tolerances because that's what clients want. They don't want the risk of exposure to the market and additional volume tolerance charges, because they have looked, because they've got a 10% monthly tolerance and the volumes aren't really aligning. Whereas if you get no volume tolerance, which a lot of suppliers can offer, that gives them a lot more flexibility to use. We also obviously have to look at, again, we have a supplier lead table. So we look at them when we're recommending, we'll look at that as well and make sure that even if that price is the best, what kind of service are they offering? Again, it goes back to service for the customer. There's no point in recommending a supplier that has got poor service for them, as it's probably going to add extra cost to their margins and things like that.
Sure. You mentioned volume tolerance, just for those that may not know.
So volume tolerance is, you get forecasted volume. So say you're going to use 100,000 for the year, you get 10% maybe monthly, so that will break down 10% either side, or you could look at 10% annually or 20% annually. So you would have 20% either side of 100,000 in that case on an annual volume tolerance. And if you went above that, there could be additional charges that the supplier may charge you, and that will be looking on based on the market and when you actually went out of volume tolerance.
Yeah, so essentially it's mitigating risk for the client, and making sure they're aware of the clauses within their contract, because I'm sure the clients that you're speaking to, similar to me on a day-to-day basis, the last thing they want is surprises, unknown charges coming through. Certainly from my experience, particularly since COVID, credit seems to have been a lot higher on suppliers' agenda. What do we do to help customers ensure that they get the best credit stipulations within their contracts? Well,
it's just negotiating. We'll look at all the credit options we have. We'll go back to our client managers we will then go back to the clients and see if we can get additional accounts, see what we can do there, because ultimately the credit risk has gone up a lot more, and people like Atreides are looking at lower exposures because of the risk of the market. When the market did crash and it spiked, what it led to is massive energy prices and credit risks to because obviously suppliers were paying a lot more for the energy that had already been bought, for example. So it meant exposures, and they lost a lot out. I know suppliers are seen sometimes as the devil, but they're not. In the case of they just try to be a business as well. And they need to make sure that they're keeping their business afloat the same as we do. So,
yeah, I mean, I've had some experience of that quite recently with quite a large hospitality group that we're working with, and I was really impressed with the way that your team facilitated that alongside the supplier. But it was about getting them around a table and having a sensible conversation, client, ourselves, to mediate almost the supplier and also their credit insurers, and providing the relevant information to give them confidence that the group could pay for the energy that they're requesting. And they were able to then get a contract without a security deposit. So I think it's great when I see us going that extra mile for customers to get them those results. And I think that's a testament to the strong relationships we have with suppliers due to the length of time we've been in the market and the amount of volume that we place. So when I think we've touched on it a few times previously, but what are the sort of the key metrics that you consider when you make a recommendation to a customer?
It will look at obviously price, but for example, we didn't really talk about flex. We'll look at their fixed price elements that they're putting in, their shape, for example, on the power, their management fee, how they're pricing their cost to serve. We'll also compare it to the current contract to see whether, if it's the same supplier that they're with against the new offer. We'll check whether they've increased the market enough and why they've done that, and see if we can negotiate that. Again, we'll look at their products. So on the flex side, we'll look at the volume tolerance again to make sure that they're offering the best volume tolerance they can. Even if that comes at additional premiums to the customer, it might be worth it just for that extra confidence in their volume and their tolerance. We also, again, like you said, we look at credit. So we'll look at see what best credit option is. In some cases on the bigger portfolios, one thing we do look at is it worth moving to another supplier, maybe just on price? If you've got a portfolio of 4,000 sites, if it's 20,000 cheaper for another supplier or to your current one, is it worth moving all of them suppliers for £20,000 when the cost to move could be a lot more, because you've got to make sure you register all your sites with the new supplier? So that's taken into account in some ways as well. We also look at risk trading premiums, because obviously one thing that gets hidden in contracts is what premiums it is to trade for any kind of flexible commodity. So if there's a premium on N2X against not what a premium without N2X, then what that could lead to is additional cost for on the risk side, and that's something that you need to take into account.
Yeah, you've mentioned a few times about the different products. Again, I think it's probably quite common in our space that customers don't always know the various different options they've got, and it's quite hard for them to compare apples for apples at times.
Yeah.
So what is it that you do that allows a customer to make sure they are comparing apple for apples? What do you present to them so that they can make an informed decision? And we touched on it earlier, no nasty surprises later down the line.
So on the flex side, what we do is we make sure that any charges that are passed through, for example, are on the contract, we'll always make sure it's the same across the board. So all suppliers will have the exact same pass-through charges and third-party charges, and then commodities exactly the same when we build up a price. What that means is the only element that's different is the actual fixed elements from each supplier, and that means it's a fair approach. So that there's no secret numbers inside one supplier to another. They are exactly the same. The difference in cost is just their fixed elements. And then on the product, we also look at the trading premiums and make sure we show kind of a cost and how much they can trade and what that element's on the pack. And then the final recommendation is just an overall pack recommendation and score, and we kind of score it as fairly as we can based on price, products, and any other credit stipulation or anything else that we could add to it.
Yeah, I think it's important to know that ultimately the decision is the client's decision.
Yeah.
We're sort of making a recommendation for them, and I see it as our role is to make sure that they've got all of the information to make an informed decision. You know, in terms of the suppliers that we work with, I think it'd be worth noting, clearing up that we don't really mind who they go with.
No.
Customer's decision. There's no sort of ulterior motive for us.
No, we don't have any agreements with any suppliers really. We have nothing like that at all that we have to put extra volume or anything. We just are fair and transparent in all our ways. We give every supplier's feedback, the exact same feedback when priced as best as we can to make it, because like we said earlier, client is king and they're the ultimate goal here to get them the best price and product.
So in terms of potential pitfalls for a customer who may not have huge experience in this area, they've got an energy contract coming up for renewal, what are the things that you would say they would need to look out for, and what do we do to help them avoid falling into those traps?
And market volatility is the big one, as everyone knows in the energy crisis. Like that is the big nuance at the moment. You know, market can move within day, fixed prices can be pulled within day. So we have to make sure that we're trying our best to get the work done as quick as possible to get the price to them for analysts. Because if we take too long to get them fixed prices to them and the record pack that we've created for them, the market could change again in a day, and that's one of the big elements. So what we try to do is make sure that we're efficient as possible in our team. We've got processes to make sure that we get things out before our deadlines. We have deadline of 2 o'clock on the day of a tender to make sure that comes out on a fix. That is on a flex market volatility. It's a little bit different because obviously you're not locking in the energy price on the day you sign. You can trade later down the line. So that's where our risk team, who do a great job with our strategies, and the more important thing for us, and we try and push, is the longer lead time on a flex, the better. Because if you can get a contract locked in for 24, 36 months from October 26, that gives our strategies the most efficient time to work. If you're not giving yourself enough lead time, you can't get the best price on market. That's the whole joy of a flex contract, is you can avoid the spikes. And so we do try and push as much as possible with our clients the longer lead times to get contracts done as quick as possible.
Sure. I've been involved in situations where we're tendering for a customer. We've presented a fully fixed price. They've obtained an alternative offer, also claiming to be a fixed price. I think one supplier's got sort of 7 different products all claiming to be fixed price.
Yeah.
I mean, I see that as a potential pitfall for customers understanding the different products. Just talk us through what we do and how we help customers understand that.
So we have a vetting process in terms of the products as well. So we look at on a fixed contract, we'll look at a fixed against a fixed. We call it fixed provision against fixed certainty. So there's some suppliers that say they're fixed, but there's terms in their contracts that means they can move price for certain elements and certain reasons. All suppliers can move for certain elements, like a new charge coming in, but there's some suppliers that will move without, with contractual terms, whereas some, for example, they say fixed is fixed. So when you lock in a contract, you're paying what your rates are against the usage, and there's no hidden surprises down the line. And then the provision product is more that they could move it. They're not saying they will, but if market does move enough, then it could potentially put them at risk.
Yeah, it all comes down to what the customer, understanding the customer's appetite for risk and what's important to their business. From my experience, those fully fixed offers are great from a budget certainty perspective.
Yeah.
But they attract a slight risk premium because they know that nothing can move within that product. And some customers want that because that's important to them.
Yeah.
Other customers are happy to take on the provision because they simply want a slightly cheaper price.
Yeah.
And they're happy to risk that they might not get passed through, but that's their business decision. I think that's important that customers are aware of that. Just because it's got fixed in the title doesn't always mean that it is fixed. And sort of following on from that, that often comes into play. We sometimes get asked to go to market for a prospect and compare our pricing against another broker / consultant. Typically, we'll walk away at that stage. Can you sort of explain why that's our approach?
We just feel that we don't feel like it's fair comparison because we can't be like for like. We never know what's hidden on the other side. We are very transparent in how we do our job. We make sure we build every single element on a flex or a fixed, and we show all costs within our price. We show all commission and the lot. We're not saying that others, TPIs may do that, but we don't know what's in that. So you're not comparing apples for apples. You're comparing apples with oranges. So it's never going to be a fair comparison. Especially if we're against someone where we're the current holders, but they're trying to win it off them, they're always going to try and sell the dream to a client. So again, that's typically where we might walk away from it because we think that potentially they're not being as transparent because they just want to win the business, whereas we're not like that. We want to win the business, but we want to be fair. And it's, again, as I say, client is the king, and that's why we do it like that.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's making sure the client is understanding what they're going to get from that process. Because the truth be told, if we go to the market on the same day as you, as another consultant, let's say, the only real difference on a fixed price in particular, if we're getting the same product from the same supplier on the same day, would be our fees.
Yeah.
It should be transparent to the client anyway. But yeah, I've certainly seen scenarios where it's about educating the customer and making them understand what they're going to get from that exercise.
Yeah.
A prime example of one where they went to the market and there were two things that the other consultant did differently. A fixed price product which wasn't fully fixed, ours was, so it wasn't a fair comparison. And also on their analysis, they didn't include CCL, the climate change levy, which made a huge difference. But the customer is going to pay that, but they weren't aware, so they signed an offer which was essentially artificially cheap.
Yeah.
And when their first invoice came through, when that contract started, they were back on the phone to us because they realised that there was a higher cost included that wasn't included from the competitor. So they were seeing if we could help them. Unfortunately, there wasn't anything because they'd signed the contract, but next time round we were able to support them with their next renewal. And that thing can happen, and we're really big on trying to educate the clients to ensure that they're fully aware of the decisions they're making, and that they are making a genuine comparison. In terms of the suppliers aspect on that, what's the supplier's typical view on pricing for numerous brokers or consultants?
They will do it fair. The one thing that we see from them is they always, if we find out that we are against someone, they will always say that they're priced on the same margins for everyone. They will never price differently for another TPI to us. It will always be one against the other. It's fair. They price exactly the same cost to serve. The only difference could be how that the other TPI is built up. Like you said, they could not include it CCL, or potentially our commissions could be different between two consultancies. But typically, a supplier will not do anything more than price exactly the same for both of us and provide the same offers.
Yeah, although I've seen different experiences to that, where the supplier, because there's multiple consultants, it's obviously more work for them to price for 3, 4, 5 different consultants, so they end up just giving everybody the same price as you've alluded to, and that actually impacts our ability to negotiate.
Yeah.
Because if we negotiate with them,
everyone negotiates.
everybody gets that. So the client's not getting what they're hoping for, because the supplier is not going to do the work time and time again for different people. So our advice is always choose your consultant first and then approach the market.
Yeah, agreed.
And typically that's where we see the best results, because otherwise it can shackle your team's abilities, really.
Yeah, it can do. We can't really do much without that. You know, we can. I think we've had a case once where we did that. We pushed for the better volume tolerance, because we said, well, they don't mind paying a premium for that. But then again, they got the same. We said we've even got confirmation that they offered that same offer to the other TPI. So again, we've tried to be better, to show our value, and it's just been told to the other TPI. So it seems a bit pointless. But yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, in terms of wrapping this up then, what would you say the key benefits are of your team and clients using your services?
I think first of all, our team is the experience we have. For example, I've been here 10 years, been in the flex department for 10 years, so I know I've been around, I've done all the kind of tenders you can, I've experienced most of the tenders. We also have a few other members of the team that have been here for a decent amount of time, so they know what they're doing, they're fully trained. You know, typically a procurement team, it's not something you just walk into and learn in a week. You know, especially in flex, there's quite a lot of nuances to it. Probably say 6 to 12 months. So having a good experience, the team knows what they're looking at, knows what they're negotiating, and I think is the first thing to look at, and something that I'm proud of in our team. And we've got a few new starters that we're training at the moment, but the bulk of the team is pretty experienced, which is great, and they'll help the new starters and show the ropes. I think also our record packs are really good and detailed. We show a lot of different elements of the cost. On the fixed price, we show everything as well. So we'll show all the different prices we've got. We'll show all the different products. So we're very detailed on that side. I think that's pretty good from our side. And then the record pack on the flex is got all the costs you could need to make a good decision from the client.
Yeah. And so ultimately, it's that whole premise of allowing the customer to make an informed decision with all of the facts and figures in front of them, and making sure that throughout the duration of that contract that your team negotiate, they're not going to be hit with any nasty surprises along the way.
Yeah, exactly.
And they can comfortably focus on other areas of their business, knowing that's been taken care of. So, no, that was great. I mean, thanks very much for your time, Dale.
Thank you for having me.
We'll see you next time.
Cheers.